What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Horsepower Obsessed. My name is Justin. Today we have two Colorado ZR2s in the driveway, which can only mean one thing, and that is more Colorado ZR2 mods. All right, guys, so like I said, we have two Colorado ZR2s in the driveway today, and that typically means we are doing some mods. So this is my friend's Midnight Edition Colorado, very similar to mine. We do a lot of the same mods because we have very similar tastes. So today we actually both have a new cold air intake for the truck, so we're going to get to install it twice. Now, my friend bought his used on Facebook Marketplace. I actually got mine sent to me from Cold Air Inductions. They sponsored this video once again. If you guys can remember, my red Colorado Z71 also had the Cold Air Inductions intake, and I actually installed it and dyno tested it. Now, on the dyno without a tune, it doesn't gain massive horsepower or anything, but you do gain a better sounding engine note, reusability, and it just looks cooler. In the environment we're in right now here in Pennsylvania, it is a very nice day. It's about 80 some degrees, but as you can see all over the cars is loaded with pollen. Now, the only reason I mention that is because that pollen also gets into your air intake, and when it does, you're gonna have to replace the filter a bunch of times to get or maintain the advertised horsepower rating out of this truck. In this case, I don't have to buy anything. I can just pull that filter out and wash it off. Now, what I'm going to do today, guys, is I'm going to show you the install process. Even though I did show that a while ago with my red Colorado, I know a lot of you guys have recently subscribed because of the ZR2, so I want to make sure you guys all understand how to install it, what it looks like, how it operates, how it sounds, all that good stuff. So my Colorado actually has the GM Performance exhaust on it as well, so that already kind of gives it an extra little bit of a growl. This air intake is going to give it even more of a growl, so this thing is going to sound pretty much the best that it possibly can with both of these combined. Let's go ahead and jump under the hood and get this thing installed. Before we continue with the install, guys, I'm going to do a little bit of an unboxing here just to show you exactly what you're going to get with this kit if you buy it directly from Cold Air Inductions or pretty much any website out there selling this particular air intake. With the packing material out of the way, we have basically just a coupler, which is going to be where your MAF airflow sensor sits. And then, of course, the box and the filter is inside of this. That's pretty much it. There's not a whole lot to this install, but that's the way I wanted it, because what this does is this allows you to maintain your factory engine cover. For some of you guys, that's not going to be a big deal, I know, but for me, I wanted to try to maintain a factory look at the end of the day, so this is the best way to do it for me. Plus, the install of this thing is going to be extremely simple. All right, so here we are under the hood of the truck. The first thing we're going to do is take off the band clamp here. It is a 7mm socket, or of course your flathead screwdriver will do the same thing. With that loose, we'll go ahead and unplug the mass airflow sensor, which is going to be a safety tab, and then just squeeze and pull. After that, there are two 10mm nuts down here, right there and right there. We're going to go ahead and remove those, and that will allow us to kind of start getting the box completely out of the truck. One last thing we got to do is go ahead and take out all of these Phillips head screws that will allow the airbox to separate in the middle, and the top part's going to come out first. Now, these will only come out about a quarter or half an inch of the way. They're not going to come out all the way, so they kind of stay stuck in the top part of the intake just so you don't lose them. So there is 4 Phillips head screws here that you'll have to partially loosen. Once they're at this state here, you can go ahead and remove the clip off the back here that's holding the mass airflow sensor wire to the top of the airbox. Then we can go ahead and start pulling the intake tube off and remove the top of the airbox. Just like that. With the top part of the airbox out, you can obviously go ahead and just remove your air filter, which, yeah, this should be pretty clean. I only have like 1,500 miles on the truck. Now we're to the point where we can remove the lower part of the airbox, and this one is interesting because once you take the 2 nuts off the bottom, there's really not anything holding it on other than a rubber grommet in the back area here, and you can just kind of grab it and pull it up and it will release. Now, there is also some duct work here that kind of goes through the fender that you'll have to finagle around a little bit. There's not really any simple way of doing it. You're going to have to just kind of pull at it and see when it releases. The cold air inductions actually will seal right up against the cold air path right here, so it will still pull cold air from the inside of your fender, and of course still give you that reusability that we talked about earlier. Back in the garage, out of the heat for a minute, what we have to do is actually swap over these rubber isolators here on the bottom of the stock intake over to the new cold air intake. So they're just rubber, they'll be able to slip right in there, and what that's going to do is allow us to bolt it back to the factory positions. So the easiest way to do this would be to grab some sort of small flathead screwdriver and actually start prying at the bottom here. You want to pry out this metal sleeve to allow that rubber isolator as much flexibility as possible. So once that's out, you can then just go ahead and start pinching this and pushing it out the bottom. Just like that. All right, so we already have one installed right here. It's pretty much the opposite of this assembly. You just kind of push from the top down or from the bottom up, whichever one's easier for you. What we want to do is ultimately get this thing fully seated in the new intake, just like that. Once that's seated, you'll just take the sleeve and push it through till it's nice and snug. And lastly, before heading back out to the truck, we got to remove the mass airflow sensor and move it over to the new intake. And this factory bolt here is a T20. This is the new cold air intake sleeve where you'll put the mass airflow sensor and the new Allen key screws to hold it in place. So we'll just tighten these down and then we're good to head back out to the truck and start putting this thing in. The next step is going to be to put the box in. Now, you guys can see the hole right there where the tab on the back of the new cold air intake box is going to want to fit down into. Basically, that's kind of like a locating tab because ultimately we just need to bolt those two 10mm nuts down here, but that's going to kind of tell you when you're in the right position. So here is the locating tab I was referring to. The entire intake is going to kind of get turned facing just like this. And we're going to kind of drop it down into place. And you'll feel whenever that locating tab goes in. So the next step would be to go ahead and grab the coupler here with your mass airflow sensor, and it's going to get installed a very specific way. You'll want this arrow right here pointing to your air filter box because the stock intake tube right here actually has a little rubber tab there on it that will fit right into this tab spot right here. So ultimately it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward install. There's not a lot you have to know about this. You can kind of just figure out what that little tab space is for, but we'll slide that on there and then push this end into the intake box, and on the end of this is where the air filter will ultimately screw onto. Okay, so we now have the coupler in place. Everything is still loose in here. I haven't tightened anything down yet because we're going to want a little bit of wiggle room when we go to install the filter and everything. You want to be able to move this stuff around. If you look at this thing, it's going to take up the majority of the air box, so it's going to be a tight fit. You want to have that flexibility and the play in that, so you don't want to bolt anything down until after the fact. It slides right on there real easily. You're going to just want to go ahead and torque down the band clamp at this point onto the aftermarket coupler here. So we'll go ahead and do that next. Keep in mind it is an 8mm socket versus the stock one here being a 7, or of course the flathead screw. We'll go ahead and tighten down the stock one here, which is a 7mm. So everything is pretty much in place. It's all lined up. We can see back here that the air filter is actually sealing against the fender to pull cold air in through the same place that the stock one did. The next step is going to be to go ahead and take your 10mm nuts and install them down below right where they were on the stock box. You can see that the box is in here pretty snug now at this point. So now what we're going to do is go ahead and put the top on and plug in the mass airflow sensor. Then just make sure you push down the red safety tab there. Last step is of course to go ahead and put on the top. We'll want to lift up the coolant lines over here and slide it right underneath. Now these are just quarter turn screws that will lock the whole lid into place. But that is going to do it for the install, guys. That is pretty much it. Like I said, this is one of the easier cold air intakes to install on the Colorado/Canyons, and it looks pretty good. Now, if you guys aren't familiar with this particular one, this is made by Cold Air Inductions. It's actually the company that makes the GM Performance cold air intake for this truck. So if it looks familiar, that's why. If your truck came with a GM Performance intake, it's the same exact thing, only it's a non-oiled air filter, and it costs about $200 more. I want to give a big thank you, big thumbs up to Cold Air Inductions. Like I said, they did send me this part for free. They are sponsoring this video, and I couldn't appreciate it more. If you guys are interested in the same intake, of course, it will be linked in the description down below. Definitely grab one. I love the reusability, the fact that it looks really awesome, and the fact that it has a couple extra ponies and some better engine sounds. All right, guys, that is going to do it for today's video. As you can see, we're about to get started on the second Cold Air Inductions install, so I'm not going to bore you with the details. It's all going to be the same stuff. But if you guys liked what you saw here today, please give me a big thumbs up. If you have any questions about the install, leave them in the comment section down below, or shoot me an email, horse.power.obsessed@gmail.com, and I will make sure you get an answer. If you guys haven't subscribed yet, please do. I'm going to have loads of Colorado ZR2 content coming you are not going to want to miss. And as always, guys, I will catch you in the next upload. Just in case you guys were wondering what visibility is like with the ditch lights, this is pretty much what's visible while driving. As you can see, not too bad. They do kind of take up a little bit, I guess, especially on the driver's side, right around the front A-pillar here, but not bad. I like them. They're pretty cool. They add a lot of light, especially when people just randomly pull out in front of you like that. That's fun. But anyway, let's hear what this intake sounds like. We'll downshift a couple times, let this intake scream a little bit. Definitely a lot more engine noise. Not bad.